Hey, Culpeper Baptist Church, we continue to provide online content to help us and encourage us during this time, and I'm real excited today. We've got one of our own, Jason Ford, who's going to talk to us about a couple of trips he's had during his college years. Jason graduated from Culpeper County High School in 2016 and has been a real important part of our church group. He just went to the Passion Conference with us in Atlanta, but he spent the last 4 years going to Mary Washington University, has been in significant leadership positions there. But I asked him to come, and we were hoping to do this in a church service, and he was actually going to preach on March 15th with Suzanne Dorsey and Lindsay Ayler, and obviously that got changed around due to the virus. So he was home this weekend, and we thought we'd bring him in and talk to him a little bit about some of his college experiences. So Jason, you took 2 trips in your college time, so tell us how you even got involved in those 2 trips.
Yes, so I went on 2 social justice fall break trips during my time at Mary Washington. As the leader of a multicultural club, the James Summer Multicultural Center decided to put these trips on to give students something to do during their fall break time. The first trip we went on was back in 2018, and my advisor for the club was the one who had created the initiative and started the idea to take this fall break trip. And once he had pitched the idea to the director of the Multicultural Center, she was fully on board with it. And around the time was when the Brian Stevenson's Equal Justice Initiative, the memorial and museum, I believe, was just opening or had opened just the year before. And it sounded like the perfect option for us to go to. So they'd done their planning, and we were able to get a charter bus. I believe the trip only costed about a little bit over $50, and we were able to go down to both the Equal Justice Museum and Memorial to see some of the exhibits and the heart impacting memorial that is also down there in Alabama.
All right, and you were starting those trips when I was just becoming familiar myself with Brian Stevenson and had been at a conference that he was one of the speakers at, and I'd read his book, Just Mercy. So I love the fact that you had gone there. And so let's just kind of walk through some slides that you've created of your trip and talk about the National Memorial for Peace and Justice.
Yes, so the first thing that I thought was incredibly interesting was the design of this memorial. Each one of the things that are hanging on screen here are essentially metal boxes with each county in Virginia, I believe, or a county across the country.
Across the country,
Counties
yeah.
across the country, and where there was a lynching, either recorded or by name, like a name recorded, or information about the individual that was lynched. And I thought it was truly incredible because you kind of see the vast effects of what lynching was in this country, where there was no part of this country in a sense that was untouched by either racial injustice or by lynching itself. So.
All right, so we get a little closer into the museum, and you can see some of those iron boxes, I guess is what they are, and they all have names on them.
Yes.
So, and I think in another slide or two, so this is, and you might not be able to see this. We'll see if Will can zoom in on this. So you've got the Culpeper County, Virginia spot that's there in the museum. Tell us what it was like to come across
to see this.
To see that.
It was interesting because I was at Mary Washington at the time. I paid attention to see if Fredericksburg had any, and they did not. But being as an individual from Culpeper, I wanted to see if my hometown had any, and we did happen to have 2. So, and I believe there was a service here.
So Allie Thompson's name is on there, and you all will remember in November of 2018, we hosted with Antioch Baptist Church the remembrance of the lynching of Allie Thompson here in Culpeper County, and we had his family here with us, and I got to meet with him privately, and we were talking before we started how powerful it was to just be with his family and to recognize that they'd never had a funeral. There'd never been any public remembrance for their family member who was killed. So, that's powerful to think. In Alabama, there's this museum that has the names of 2 people that are documented, and I think it's always important to say that. A lot of research is going into this. That's documented. We don't think that's an exhaustive list. So, all right, let's keep going on the slides. Talk a little bit about the museum and these placards here.
Yes, so the Legacy Museum was also a very impactful location down there. On screen are just a few of some of the things that had caught my eye. Over in the left picture, you can see that it says, "Today the Alabama State Constitution still mandates that there be racial segregation in education, with separate schools for white and colored children." And remember, I went to this museum in 2018. So the fact that I had saw that was truly just mind-boggling, that we can be a full generation after all of this happened, and this can still slip in or still remain in Alabama's state constitution. And just a lot of the exhibits that I had seen there were very heartfelt. There was one where it was a bunch of pieces of paper, excuse me, and there were handwritten messages or handwritten letters from people who were on death row. And there was a 13-year-old kid in there, and he had written his message on there, and at the bottom he had signed, "This is what I look like," and it was a cartoon kid drawing of what he imagined himself to look like. And it really put into perspective that it's not always, the worst idea of what a criminal could be. Sometimes it's truly just children who found themselves in the wrong situation and didn't have anyone to defend them in the court.
Didn't have any support, and that's
Definitely.
kind of Brian Stevenson's thing is, it's equal justice is what we need for everybody. All right, let's go to the next slide. This is your Selma trip.
Yes, sir.
We're going to talk about that next time, but talk to us a little bit about what it meant to be at the Equal Justice Initiative, how you see that being an important part of your college experience and learning, and how does that kind of influence you as you get ready to move out from college?
Having the ability to go to these memorials or this memorial in this museum during college was it was good timing, I would say. Usually when you're in college, you can find yourself in kind of a bubble, especially on campus, where college campuses as themselves are a little bit different than just the general space in the world. And then being at Mary Washington, a liberal arts school, is a very specific bubble to be encapsulated in. So having the opportunity to go down to Alabama, to go see these sites in person, it kind of changed my perspective at a younger age of what, racial injustice was in this country. Growing up, I always had a relatively good idea and background about what it was, and I had my opinions and stuff, but being able to go see them firsthand and to be older and to kind of have compassion for individuals, on both sides of it, have kind of put it into a different perspective and a different light for me.
Right, and I think so often, sometimes you'll hear people say, well, why do we keep bringing up the past? So talk about that. Why do we need to know this stuff as we try to live today?
I believe it's important to know for history like this specifically because it's a type of history that hasn't gone away. Racial injustice and racism in this country is one of the, bitter to say, foundational pieces of us as a country. It's who essentially we are. It's been sewn into our history, especially through situations like this where in our Constitution that can still remain today. And I think it's important to know this because as you come across and encounter things in today's world, you can kind of see some of the reminiscences of the old-time laws and old-time rules that were in place. And it's also important just to understand who we are as people and where our people have come in this country alone. The country is, I believe, a little bit over 400 years
Over 400 years since Western folks came.
Yes, definitely. So to understand the course of the country within that time frame will definitely give you a better understanding of some of the issues today through society and in government. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about, so you obviously go there, you're a campus leader at Mary Washington. You've got such a great heart and such great aspirations to making a difference in our world. Talk a little bit about the faith component of it. As a person of faith, when you encounter these kind of museums and these stories, where do you see the church's opportunity to make a difference?
I believe that the church always has the opportunity to make a difference, but it's also the individual that has to take the initiative to either connect that bridge or be the bridge to bring it over. Faith has been a very important player in my life. It has kept me on track where I have found myself stepping off. And I can see in situations seeing situations of individuals going through the civil rights movement and dealing with some of the issues of racial injustice. I know if I myself were in those shoes, I would not be able to make it a day without having the faith that God is there to protect me. I understand the relationship that I have and the love that I have and that He has for me. Granted, my situation and circumstances in reality and in person may be set up against me. God has favor over all of our lives, and He has chosen us to be His people and His children. And it would be essentially like an anchor in a dock, and there's a storm going on around, and everything around you can be coming down or feels as if it's up against you. but knowing that God is on your side and that you have the relationship with God keeps you anchored and keeps you safe.
There's an element of hope in all of this, and I think we need to do a really good job of communicating that. Just Mercy, the book by Brian Stevenson, is one of the most hopeful books I've ever read. The movie just came out back in January and February.
Yep.
We were trying to get a showing here in Culpeper, but couldn't figure out how to make that happen. But talk about the hopeful nature of folks who have been battling institutional racism and how that is developed by faith. Where have they been finding hope?
I could say that they have been finding hope in individuals like Brian Stevenson, when someone who, as an individual on the outside, as you could say, devotes their life to come and help and assist people who may have been in situations where they don't have the ability to get help. It is individuals like him and individuals across this country who still fight tooth and nail day and day to make sure that people who are not in a position to defend themselves or protect themselves in the court or against the courts of justice, that they are there to be able to step in and assist those people.
All right. Thank you for taking us on a quick trip through the Peace Museum, the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. And next session, we're going to talk about his trip on the Freedom Trail, starting in Selma, Alabama. So look forward to seeing you when we come back for the next session with Jason.
See you again.